Indiana Pacers comeback, unfortunately, which we got to witness firsthand here as fans of the Cleveland Cavaliers. But again, Jason, quite an unbelievable finish to this game, topped off by an unbelievable Tyrese Halliburton.
Yeah.
Maybe three, ended up being a two, to dribble into the lane, seemingly like he was going to the basket, and then somehow pop back out behind the 3 point line. And then the ball bounces literally that. I wonder how that would rank in terms of, we need some second spectrum data on how high that ball bounced off the rim, how that compares to the
Very similar to
highest.
the Kawhi three, right? Very similar to the Kawhi three in Toronto.
I feel like this bounced higher, if only because this one hit the back of the rim, which seems like it would be a sturdier spot to hit and then bounce up into the air compared to Kawhi's hit the side of the rim since it was taken from the corner. Similar in a sense of, obviously when that ball is in the air, everyone's heart is in their throat in that entire arena, and anybody as fans of either one of these two teams watching it the entire time while that ball is hanging above the cylinder, waiting to see whether it's going to go in or not, is kind of crazy. And then for the fact that they thought it was a three, at least Indiana thought it was a three, and Halliburton gives the Reggie Miller choke sign, and then to have to come back and play overtime for both teams, just an emotionally exhausting game. Obviously, at that point, the Pacers had the momentum. The overtime kind of swings back and forth. Just an unbelievable game for Indiana to be down nine and come back. And now to have done that in three consecutive series, first against Milwaukee, then against the Cavs, and then finally here in game one against the Knicks, to pull out three incredibly improbable victories. It's just insane.
It's nuts, Mike. So there's a lot to digest in this game, and I'm going to be completely transparent and honest. I watched bits and pieces of it. I had it on in the background. I, my kids were having issue and I was trying to keep up with Survivor finale tonight. I was trying to do too many things. I was grading papers, Mike. I was grading math papers because that's what I love to do. And the fourth quarter happens, and Brunson picks up his fifth foul, Mike. He sits him on the bench, and the Knicks go on an 18-7 run, or like a ridiculous run. I was like, oh, the new Ewing theory, Brunson theory, going
Now, I
on.
don't
He was
think
off the
that's going to
floor.
be true. I don't think we have anything to worry about that there's going to be
No,
a Brunson theory, because without Brunson on the floor, the Knicks are dead in the water. And I know they weren't in this particular situation for a very small stretch, but Jalen
so
Brunson not being
yeah,
available for any length of time means the New York Knicks would be
yeah.
dead on arrival.
So they were up. I think you said 116 to 102. Is that what the score was, Mike? With like
Yes. Yes.
2:30 left, and they just got. I mean, the Pacers just went nuts. I mean, Naismith hit six threes in the fourth quarter, Mike. Six threes in the fourth quarter. He had 8 for the game, 30 points, 20 points in the fourth quarter. It's just it's just unbelievable. And you know what? It's like, do you know what? I will say this, Mike. I hated it when it was against us. But them doing this to the Knicks kind of brought me a little bit of joy. Just brought me a little bit of joy in MSG. Come on, I know you were rooting for New York, but this brings me a little bit of joy that it happened to the Knicks because uh, I mean, I'm not a big Knicks guy. I mean, I prefer the Knicks over the Celtics, I guess, but it brought me a little bit of joy that it happened. Someone tweeted, I saw someone tweet, well, I guess Halliburton has replaced Trey Young for the most hated player in MSG, something like that. And then just the whole thing, the whole pageantry of how he did the choke thing with Reggie Miller on the call. It was fantastic, and it was great. And uh, they asked him after the game. He's like, I wanted to do this in the Garden. I celebrated a little bit too early, but if I had a chance to pull it out again, I will, or something like that. And then Rick Carlisle was asked after the game, do you wish that Halliburton didn't do it? And he's like, if it wasn't for Halliburton, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. He's earned the right to do whatever he wants when it comes to that kind of stuff. I'm not going to tell him no. So Listen, the bottom line is this. I think if we could get a 7-game series that with games like that, that's fantastic. Now, I don't know what that means going against the Western Conference. We're going to go there in a minute or two here, but I mean, this was a great game of basketball, a back and forth game of basketball. When the Knicks or when the Pacers took the lead in overtime, Mike, that was the first time they had the lead since it was 47-46 in the second quarter. They hadn't had the lead all in the second half. I think it was like 3.5 minutes left in the second quarter when that happened. So it's just a great game, back and forth. You thought the Knicks had got it locked up. Then the Pacers came back, then hit the shot, goes to overtime, back and forth. Just some of the finishes, the Obi Toppin dunk. There were two Obi Toppin dunks. There was an Obi Toppin dunk off of a missed three that was awesome, and then he got. I don't know what the Knicks' defensive game plan was on the last inbounds play. They didn't guard any. They didn't guard the inbounder, first thing. Okay, so it's 20 seconds left. They're down a point. So they have to foul. Okay? They didn't guard the inbounder. The ball gets inbounded. I think it was Naismith. No, it was Nemhard. Nemhard got the ball. He dribbled up the middle. They went to double him, and Obi Toppin was wide open for a dunk. And then they got really lucky that they didn't call a foul because Obi Toppin got smacked on the side of the head, and they didn't call that. Because they could have called that, and then that would have been over. And did you see how the game ended, Mike? So the Knicks missed like 3 threes, and then they ended up getting the ball with 0.2 seconds left. And Reggie or someone says, Stan Van Gundy says, you should just hand the ball to Karl-Anthony Towns because there was 0.2 seconds. They can't do anything if you just hand the ball to Karl-Anthony Towns. And Reggie Miller goes, oh, that'd be cold. And then Tyrese Halliburton just hands him the ball. It was great. Anyways, the bottom line is this. I hope that we have 7 good games of this series because I don't think that we're going to have 7 good games of the other series. Let's just be honest. And we can talk about that other series and what that looks like. The other thing, and to bring something into light that I don't know, since you didn't really catch much of the game since you were actually like recording an episode or whatever. This game was refereed very, very, very differently down the stretch than Oklahoma City game was refereed at any point yesterday. And this goes back to what we talked about, 2 days ago about the consistency of the refereeing. They got to figure that out. Listen, SGA on his drives yesterday was literally like getting poked, and or not even fouled. There was 2 or 3 phantom fouls. One got reversed. Whereas I'm not lying to you, Mike, that down the stretch of this game, there was contact on pretty much every play, and they didn't call it. So the league's got to figure it out. This is frustrating. It can be frustrating for the players. It's going to be frustrating for the fans. It's going to be frustrating for the coaches because we don't know what's going to get called, what's not from game to game. This goes back to what we talked about 2 days ago. They have to do a better job of being at least consistent. The league has to tell these referees, like, if you're going to let them play, we got to let them play across. Like, we can't have one game because I guarantee you the next game, Oklahoma City. Does Oklahoma City play tomorrow?
Yes.
Yeah, they play tomorrow. So the Oklahoma City game, I guarantee you, they're not going to call as much tomorrow. They're gonna overcorrect probably. Would be my guess. Maybe I'm wrong, and I know it's hard in the moment to do that, but like the refereeing in these 2 games was so different, vastly different in my opinion. At least from what I saw, and I know people were in foul trouble in this game, but I feel like they need to do something, and I don't know what that something is, and I don't know what they can do on that. But I really just hope this is a good 7-game series, Mike. That's what I want.
Right. So the officiating piece, we can talk about it until we're blue in the face. I don't think it's going to be. I don't think it's a fixable problem because the referees, as long as we have human beings reffing these games and they're not being ref by robots with artificial intelligence, the human factor is always going to play into it. The same way that no 2 games between 2 teams play out exactly the same, no game being officiated by the same officials, let alone different officials, it's never going to be as consistent as we want it to be. And I think the best you can hope for is that a game is officiated consistently within the confines of a particular game by a particular crew of referees, whether that means that fouls that are called in the first quarter are also called in the fourth quarter. Fouls that are called on one player are also called on another player. Fouls that are called on one team are also called on the other team. I think that has to probably be the number one goal because there's a human factor. And I just don't know that we're ever going to solve the officiating challenges. This game, I got a number of thoughts when it comes to how this game played itself out. Number one, I don't think that if you went back 5 years ago and you were to predict what a Tom Thibodeau coached team's playoff game would look like, I don't think anyone would have envisioned the way that this game looked in terms of just, I don't want to say the lack of defense, but just the offensive firepower that was on display from both of these two teams that clearly the Pacers want to push the pace, which helped them to beat the Cavs in the last round. But the Knicks also have a very, very good offensive team. Defensively, obviously, they have Bridges and Anunoby and Mitchell Robinson, who are very good defensively, Josh Hart. But then you have Brunson and Towns, who are below average defenders. And so it's interesting that this Knicks team has sort of reoriented itself around the offensive end of the floor, which we knew they've done that all throughout the regular season. So both teams, just to have this game get into the high 130s, playoff basketball, where we typically think of the game as slowing down, that certainly was not the case tonight. I mean, Indiana opened the game 8 for 8 from the floor, and they ended up still being down, I think, a point at the end of the first quarter. And Indiana, look, we talked about it in the preview the other day that they were going to pick up Brunson and try to wear him out. Brunson did get one, as you mentioned earlier, just because of foul trouble, but he also got a little bit of an extended break in the first half. Campaign came in and banged home 2 threes, which were important in the moment as Brunson's sitting. If you can buy any time, if you're in New York with Brunson on the bench, you're going to be better off, especially with that as Brunson dependent as their offense is to be able to generate looks for not only himself, but for other guys. They run almost everything through him. And look, Indiana didn't really have many answers for Jalen Brunson tonight, just like at times they didn't have a lot of answers for Donovan Mitchell other than trying to wear him out. And Mitchell eventually did get worn down in that series and had the injuries, and who knows what's going to happen with Brunson. I think Indiana is going to continue to push the pace. The fact that the Knicks lost this game, despite, as we said, being up 14 with 3 minutes to go and being up 9 with 55 seconds to go, you wonder the same way that the Cavs lost that game too. Psychologically, what kind of effect does this have on the Knicks players, on the psyche of the fans? Obviously, now you go into game two on Friday night, and that game becomes it's a must win for the Knicks. And New York's Knicks fans are similar to Cleveland fans in the sense of there's a natural tendency to think the worst for what is about to happen. And as things could potentially go bad, you're going to start to feel that nervous energy in the crowd. And does that affect the Knicks in any way? I don't know. It's kind of there's so many weird parallels in this game to the two games that Indiana won before, right, against Milwaukee and the Cavs in terms of just the collapse. I don't remember who said it, but somebody on one of the podcasts that I was listening to said that whenever you have a comeback like this, it might have been Zach Lowe, that there's always a missed free throw is always involved. And Carl Towns went 1 for 2 from the line. And now Towns was good tonight. I mean, he had 35. He played really well offensively. Defensively, he's a sieve. I mean, he can't move his feet or stay in front of anybody. He gets lost out there all the time. And the Pacers were taking advantage of that throughout the entire game. But offensively, that's about as good of a Carl Towns playoff game as you're going to get. But still, misses that free throw that, look, Is that the only reason why they lost? Clearly not. You don't give up a 9-point lead in 55 seconds just because of a missed free throw, but a missed free throw clearly factored into allowing the Pacers to come back from that 9-point deficit to tie the game. And so I think as you look forward in this series, right, you have to look at and say this game was played at the pace that the Pacers want to play at. You had the Knicks who had two huge fourth quarter comebacks against Boston in games that they probably had no business winning in games 1 and 2 of their previous series. And now the tables were turned on them tonight. And so it'll be game 2 will be a huge gut check time for New York. And I know I listened to a couple different pods today that were talking about are the Knicks sort of the team of destiny. And after tonight, man, and seeing that Halliburton shot go in and the fact that now they've come back from 8 or 9 down with
Yeah.
less than a minute to go 3 times in 3 straight series, there's a party that just says, man, for whatever reason, feels like karma may be on the Pacers side.
Yeah, for sure. What do you think's going to happen, Mike? Like, is this a 7-game series? 6. This is 6 or 7 for sure, in my opinion.
I mean, I said New York in 7. We said Pacers. Pacers. We both said Pacers in 7, right?
No, you didn't want to pick the Pacers. I thought you went. I thought you went New York, and I went Pacers, and I thought we. But maybe I'm wrong. I can't remember. That's 2 days ago. And I can't remember.
We got to start writing this stuff down. I'm pretty sure we both went. I think we both agreed. I think we both went Pacers, and I think I hemmed and hawed and eventually went Pacers in 7.
Okay.
We'll have to go. Somebody can fact check us since we're not fact checking ourselves. I need to do a better job of just writing stuff down. When we're
you sticking with Pacers in 7?
I'm sticking with Pacers in 7. Let's go with that. I think. Look, game 2, obviously, as I just said, becomes critically important. If New York loses game 2 and you're down 0-2 in having lost 2 times in your own building, as the Cavs proved, your margin for error, if you lose the first 2 games at home, is very, 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 very slim. I think the thing with Indiana.
Yeah, can I just say something? I can bet
Sure.
you the NBA is not going to cost the Knicks to game 2. Now they might lose game 2, but the refereeing in the NBA is not going to let them cost the game like it happened in Cleveland.
Maybe I don't know. Maybe depending on what crew you send there. But I think the thing that I'm looking at moving forward more so than the officiating or anything else is just, and I think it's what has been surprising about Indiana, and maybe it's just because we didn't watch enough Pacers during the regular season, but their ability to just continuously push the ball up the floor. And even in the midst of the playoffs where the games typically slow down, the fact that they've been able to play at the pace that they've been able to play has, I think, really caught other teams off guard and made them play to the Pacers style. And even though you can say, well, the Knicks collapsed and they should have won this game. And yeah, if you look to the next game, if we play it the same way and then you just don't have the crazy finish, it's easy to say. And the Cavs could easily say that. The Bucks could say the same thing. At some point, when you lose a crazy game that you should win, more often than not, that comes back to bite you when it comes to the ultimate outcome of a series. I mean, you can make the argument right in the last series for the Knicks that Boston shouldn't have lost games 1 and 2. And if they don't, the results of that series looks a lot different. But the fact of the matter is that they did blow 2 20-point leads against the Knicks, and the Knicks did blow a 9-point lead in 55 seconds tonight. And it doesn't change the fact, no matter how you want to look at it and say, well, New York outplayed them for 47 minutes, played well enough to win. That's great.
All that matters is the end result, right? It's all that
doesn't
matters.
Doesn't matter because you're down. If you're the Knicks, you're down 1-0 and you're facing a must-win game 2 on your home floor against a team now that has a ton of confidence, a ton of swagger. I mean, everybody on their team, if you look up and down the box score, and what's interesting is, I mean, there's nobody that is getting in games that is playing poorly, right?
No one's Isaac Okoroing. No one's Dean Wading.
No one's playing poorly. Siakam playing well. Neesmith playing well. Miles Turner playing well. Nemhart playing incredible. Halliburton, he's been awesome except for
Obi
what
Toppin,
2 games
baby.
against the Cavs. Toppin played really well. Had 10 rebounds tonight. Thomas Bryant comes in. He's doing functional things. TJ McConnell is just an annoying pest. Matherin, as much as he was a clown in the Cavs series, he was effective tonight in what he does, playing physical, getting under people's skin. They're just every guy on that team is playing well. And when that's the case, I mean, look, we've gone back and forth. I think Tyrese Halliburton is the guy that, when I think about the discussions that we've had over the last 2 or 3 years, Tyrese Halliburton has been a guy that we have gone probably up and down on more than just about anybody else
I mean, he was
in the
unplayable in the
league.
Olympics, Mike. He was unplayable.
And we revisited our Darius Garland, Tyrese Halliburton debate. I think we can put that debate safely to rest at this point. I think we can safely say that Halliburton has clearly eclipsed certainly anything Darius Garland has accomplished in his playoff career. He's well behind what Tyrese Halliburton has accomplished at this point. So, look, I think going forward, if you're the Knicks, you have to hang your hat on the fact that the Pacers really didn't slow down Brunson or Towns offensively. And can we play a little bit better defensively if we're the New York Knicks and then just finish the game off? That's the case that you're making. If you're New York, you still have a potential game 7 at home. If you're Indiana, all you're saying to yourself is, we just have to keep doing what we're doing. We have to continue to push the pace. We have to continue to have confidence. We have to continue to utilize our offense to lead us into lots of scores, which leads us into the ability to be able to pick up full court, continue to wear the Knicks down. And I still think that everything that we said in the preview still rings true. I think Indiana's going to try to wear the Knicks down with their depth. I think they're going to continue to try to press Brunson, who had 43 tonight, and he was just as good as he's ever been. But at some point, the minutes and the wear and tear of him going against fresh guys all the time and playing at this pace. Indiana wants to play at this pace. Indiana's used to playing at this pace. The Knicks are playing faster than what they want to do. And although they played really well offensively and they're a really good offensive team, they're playing Indiana's game right now. And if they play Indiana's game for the rest of the series, I think Indiana probably pulls it out. And look, game 2, Indiana gets game 2. I don't think we're looking at a 7-game series. I think it'll be over before that. If New York can bounce back and win game 2, then I think we're looking at a long series. But we'll see. It'll be an interesting game on Friday night.
Yeah, for sure. And you know what was really nice? I really like that the NBA this year has gone to they were playing every other day, no matter what. Like, we're not traveling and all this stuff. We're playing every other day the rest of the way until these series are over. I like
every other day. I like the game starting at 8 or 8:30 as opposed to starting a game at 9, which really means it's starting at 9:15.
Is the end? So will the finals going to be at? The finals are all 8:32, 8 and 8:32. Nice.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
It was 9 when we were playing Golden State, right? I mean, it was ridiculous.
It makes more sense. 8 or 8:30 makes more sense.
Yeah.
At least on the East Coast. Maybe it's not so great on the West Coast, but on the East Coast it makes more sense.
Yeah. All right. So then let's move to the Western Conference game. And the bottom line here, Mike, and I already talked about the fouls and all that stuff, but I don't know. I'm gonna stick with my Oklahoma City in 5. But nothing like the first quarter of the Minnesota game. The first quarter, Minnesota competed. The second quarter, they were there. But the end of the second quarter, into the third quarter, I just felt like it was over after that. I didn't have any confidence. I thought,
over.
What?
It was over.
I mean, there was nothing. And I mean, I'll be honest, I didn't even watch the fourth quarter because it was over. It was done. Dusted. So I'm really hanging my hand on the New York Indiana series to be a great one because I don't think this is going to be a good series. I just don't think they have anything that can compete with them. And I just think that Oklahoma City has too many weapons. Minnesota was, as you like to call it, the clogged toilet offense was being run multiple times last night. Um, and they're just Oklahoma City, like much like Indiana has all these guys. Oklahoma City has all these guys. They were just throwing all these guys at Anthony Edwards every single time there's ball. Listen, the only reason Minnesota even had a breath in the third quarter, Mike, the beginning of the third quarter, was because old man Mike Conley started making shots. I mean, that was the only reason. That's the only reason that game was at least like seemingly competitive until late in the third, middle of
Well, what's
third.
crazy is right. What's crazy is it was Minnesota. I think there was like 7 minutes to go in the third quarter, and Minnesota was up 60-56, and it went to a timeout right after that little mini Conley run. And then they came back out of that timeout, and Oklahoma City just completely overwhelmed them with, again, same thing they did to Denver in Game 7 with just the
Well,
defensive pressure that made it impossible for Minnesota to get where they wanted
well,
to go
well, I
on the
feel like
floor.
they said like they had 42 points at halftime, Oklahoma City, and then I don't remember what they ended up in the third quarter, but I remember it was like a minute or two left. They'd scored like 34 points in the third quarter, so they were almost to their whole first half total in the third quarter. It was like LeBron used to say we can know how to flip the switch. It was like Oklahoma City flipped the switch in the third, like mid to late third quarter. It was just toast. The game was over.
Yeah.
Once that quarter ended, it
Yeah.
was over.
I mean, they scored 32 in the third and then 38 in the fourth. I think so. Look, we talked about it again in the preview that Oklahoma City's defense is the best, you want to call it, unit left in the playoffs. They were going to bring it every night. They have multiple guys that they can throw at every position. They can guard you in a lot of different ways. They can play big, they can play small, they can match up in lots of different directions. And last night, Minnesota, Randall got off to a really good start. Ant was relatively passive going to the basket. He had that one tried to throw down the massive dunk where Dort fouled him as he was going in to try to throw it down, and then he ended up twisting his ankle. Not that that necessarily affected him for the rest of the game, but Ant has to be better. I mean, we talked about one of my keys was that Ant and SGA, Ant had to play him to kind of a standstill. And clearly that wasn't the case last night, although Shea was 10 for 27 from the floor overall. And I think he was 2 for 13 in the first half. So much better second half for Shea, but still not his usual efficient self. And you make a great point that Oklahoma City wasn't very good on offense in the first half. And yet you look up at the end of this game and it's a, 26-point win for the Thunder when they probably played only really one good half of basketball. If you're Minnesota, you have to think to yourself that one, Ant is going to play better. If he doesn't, it doesn't matter. The series is going to be over if he doesn't play better. So you got to believe that he's going to play better. And then you look at the 3-point shooting, and we talk about it's a make or miss league. And I don't think it's a make or miss game completely, but Minnesota shot 51 threes out of their 83 total shots. So they shot 29% from three, and Naz Reid 1 for 11, DiVincenzo 3 for 14, Alexander Walker 3 for 11. So those guys combined to go, what is that, 5 for 36? That's not
Yeah.
good. And those are all bench guys. Those are all guys that are coming in off your bench that shot 5 for 36. And not all those were wide open shots, but there was a number of shots that were pretty open. And I think Minnesota generated some good looks from the 3-point line. They just couldn't knock them in, anybody except for Julius Randle. So if you're Minnesota, you have to say to yourself, we were at times able to get good shots. We just have to make them. And maybe some of that is as simple as that. But I do think a couple of the other things that we talked about were that Minnesota had to beat up Oklahoma City on the boards, specifically on the offensive glass. And Oklahoma City out rebounded Minnesota 48-42. If that's going to happen, it's not going to be good. And then we also talked about the fact that Minnesota couldn't turn the ball over. And I think Minnesota had 19 turnovers, which, if I remember reading correctly, led to 31 Thunder points. And then conversely, the Thunder had how many turnovers did they have? They had 12 turnovers, and that turned into 10 Minnesota points. So Oklahoma City was plus 21 on points off turnovers. That is not a recipe for success for the Timberwolves. So I think if you're Minnesota, and this goes back to why I picked the Thunder, I still don't think that it's going to be quite as easy of a series as you do. I think Minnesota has some more cards to play, but there's just a lot more ifs with Minnesota. So you have to look at it and say, okay, second game, if Anthony Edwards plays better, if we shoot better from three, if we win the rebounding battle, if we don't give up tons of turnovers and get beat by 21 in points off of turnovers, maybe we can turn it around. That's a lot of ifs that you are banking on if you're Minnesota. I do think they'll play better. I do think they'll shoot the ball better. I do think that their length can at least make Oklahoma City work. When Oklahoma City has to play in the half court, they didn't have a ton of success against Minnesota. Jaden McDaniels got in some foul trouble, which made it more difficult for him to be able to be his usual punishing self as a defender, which again goes back to the officiating and how the game's being called, especially with McDaniel spending as much time on Shea as he is. It'd be interesting to see how that game too is officiated, especially in terms of
Yeah.
Shea initiating contact and getting calls. So there's definitely things I think that Minnesota can point to that they could say, hey, we're not as bad as this loss looked. There's some things that we can clean up and things that we can do better. And then if we just make more threes or maybe reorient some of our shots to get to the basket a little bit more, maybe they couldn't get to the basket. Maybe that's why they had to take 51 threes because they just couldn't penetrate the defense. But a lot of times it felt like they were settling for threes, whether that was because of Oklahoma City's pressure or whether it was because they just kind of got eventually beaten into submission to shoot threes rather than trying to get to the rim. I'm not 100% sure, but there's some things that Minnesota can do to turn this around.
So what do you think? So you
But
think it's what's the series? What is it then? Oklahoma City and how many?
I still think it's going to go 7. I'm going to stick with my
Wow.
original
You
prediction.
you have a lot of faith in Chris Finch, man. I do not. There was some bud. I was getting some bud smells in some of the moves in that game. I'm just
Maybe, but I still think that when the ball doesn't go in the basket and you have decent looks, especially when you're being pressured,
Mike.
and maybe
Mike,
you can
Mike, you
say,
realize the
"What?
Cavs just did that.
Look, I get it." And maybe it'll all fall apart like it did for the Cavs, but maybe it won't. And maybe in the second game you come back and you shoot a higher percentage. Look, I think the thing with Minnesota that I like that I don't necessarily know that the Cavs had over the second half of this season is I still think Minnesota is a really good defensive team. And they did make it very difficult in that game for Oklahoma City to score in the half court. Oklahoma City won that game through their defensive pressure, turning the ball over and creating steals and then creating open court
Yeah.
opportunities for them to get easy baskets. And so if you're Minnesota, and look, Minnesota all season long has been a team that has turned the ball over. I think they're certainly, I think, in the top 10 in terms of turnovers over the course of the regular season. I forget, they might have been like number, I don't know, I can't remember. I looked at it at some point. They were maybe in the 5 to 10 range in terms of turnovers per game. And so they've never been a team that's been super clean handling the ball. So maybe that just continues to be an issue and they can never solve that problem. And Oklahoma City gets 25 or 30 points off turnovers every game. And if that's the case, then Minnesota's going to lose. And maybe you'll be right. It's going to be over in 5. But if Minnesota can clean that up and be able to get themselves shots on every possession, and like I said, crash the offensive boards and then make Oklahoma City work in the half court offense as opposed to being able to get out and run off the live ball turnovers, I do think that there's a path for Minnesota to be able to win some games in this series. And even though game one looks really lopsided, game ones sometimes don't always tell the entire story. Certainly, the team that wins game one has a big advantage. but I don't think it's told the entire story in this series. I expect Ant to be better. I expect those role guys who have all been in, well, certainly DiVincenzo and Nas Reed have been in big playoff games. Nikhil Alexander Walker, maybe not quite as much as those other two guys, but those other two guys have a proven track record of being able to knock down shots in playoff games. So I think they'll probably shoot the ball better. I expect to see a better version of Anthony Edwards. Randall just continued his good play from the first two rounds. So we'll see. I still think there's a lot of ifs with Minnesota, but I do think that there are things that they can do that they can improve upon that can enable them to be able to compete with Oklahoma City.
Okay. I'm general and sweeping. I'm sticking with what I said.
All right, it's fair. I'm not going to disagree with you. I mean, they've been they've been very good, and they probably should have won that Denver series in shorter than 7. Let a couple games slip away from them. It feels like each game that they play, they're getting a little bit more confident in who they are and what they are as the youngest team in the league. That was the question mark going into the playoffs, was were they ready for the moment? And there were times against Denver where they kind of looked wobbled, but somehow they managed to stay on their feet or get up off the mat or whatever boxing analogy you want to use. Denver didn't knock them out, and we'll see if Minnesota can do it. But I feel like they're getting stronger mentally and just in the way that they play. These last two games, they've just looked overwhelming on defense, and we'll see if
Yep.
Minnesota can solve that.
Sounds good. All right. So, Mike's the plan going to be to try to do one Friday night after game 2 in the series? You want to try?
Well, we'll see. We'll see. I'll make no promises to our
Well,
audience
okay.
or
So
to
here's
you.
what's going to
But
happen. We'll either do one Friday night or we'll do one Sunday night. Let's make that.
yeah, I think that's fair.
We'll try to do either Friday or Sunday. We will not record tomorrow night. We will not record Saturday night because it would be silly to do it in the middle of game 3. So
Yeah,
we
right.
we will
Either Friday
see
or Sunday.
Friday or Sunday, and then our typical Tuesday spot, and then go from there.
Sounds like a plan. All right.
All right.
Thanks for checking out this Game 1 NBA Conference Finals pod. Appreciate everyone listening, and we will catch you on our next episode. Thanks.